Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Kansas City, Kansas Public Library and our program Understanding the Dynamics of Domestic Violence, presented to us by Carlen Davis, Community Outreach Educator with Friends of Yates. Carlen, the floor is yours.
Good morning. Thank you, Elena. Um, Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. And thanks again for the opportunity. And I apologize for the delay, but um, I would like to share some information about domestic violence and the dynamics of domestic violence. As Elena said, I am with Friends of Yates. We are the only domestic violence agency in the Kansas City, Kansas area, and we serve the greater Kansas City population. Our agency has been open since 1913, and the Domestic Violence Agency um, opened in 1980 as the uh, Wyandotte County Battered Women's Shelter. And so within 24 hours of opening our doors, our shelter was filled to capacity. And so we still serve in that same capacity today with complete, we're always filled to capacity, just like all the other shelters in the area. We do work in the metropolitan area with 5 other shelters. And we share that responsibility of providing services for domestic violence victims and survivors. So, as I said today, I just want to give you a better understanding of what all is entailed with domestic violence and hopefully provide you some resources that are helpful to you as well as anyone else that may be experiencing or exposed to or just have knowledge of someone that is experiencing relationship abuse. So first we'll talk about the tactics of abusers, the type of abuse, and I'll also give you some statistics. We'll talk about some national statistics as well as statistics here in Kansas. I also want to delve in a little bit more about economic abuse, and we'll cover that. And then we'll move on to resilience in survivors, and that covers safety planning, supporting survivors, and then I'll close out with providing our services that we have here and our programming that's available to our community. Um, I just have a couple of disclaimers because we're talking about relationship abuse. It may be triggering for some, or there may be some information or parts of this presentation that may trigger you. So I just want you to be sure to take care of yourselves. If you need to step away, take a deep breath, get some water, whatever, please do so. Also, the language that I use throughout this presentation, I may refer to the victim as she or survivor. I may refer to the abuser as he or partner, but it is understood that um, anyone from any population can fall under both the victim and the abuser category. Okay. So, what is domestic violence? Domestic violence, in a nutshell, is relationship abuse, and it's a pattern of coercive behaviors where one person tries to gain and maintain control over their partner. It could be an intimate partner that you're currently with, it could be someone you were previously with, and it also could be a family dynamic. It could be a family member in your home. So domestic violence isn't just about a lover's quarrel. It can be a relative um, in that dynamic as well. Excuse me. So there are a few different types of abuse I want to just talk about briefly. The first one listed here is physical abuse, and we all know what the physical abuse is. That's very self-explanatory. We'll also talk about verbal and emotional abuse, and that's just insults, someone making you feel bad, or gaslighting, if you're familiar with that term or what that is, just another form of manipulation. Economic abuse, that's when someone attempts to control or sabotage someone else's finances. Sexual abuse is any form of unwanted and any form of an unwanted sexual act is considered sexual abuse. Technological abuse, also, that is something that we see quite frequently with the use of the internet. social media following, hacking into your email accounts, and even installing GPSs on your phone. Those are all forms of technological abuse. And then the last but not least, stalking is commonly used as well. A lot of times that doesn't just occur during a relationship, it takes place after a relationship. With all these different types of abuse, um, normally an abuser doesn't just use one or the other. But as victims, we may see these as independent, unrelated incidents or events, but they're not, they are all connected in a cycle of abuse that I'll talk about as well. On this slide is a power and control wheel. This was developed by a group in Minnesota, Duluth, Minnesota, I believe. And what they did was they identified 8 different behaviors that abusers commonly use. And this isn't all inclusive. These are just behaviors after doing research and studies that this is what they came up with. So at the center of the wheel, we see power and control. And the second component around that are the various tactics that are used. And then on the very outside of the wheel, that represents the violent act, and that's either going to be the sexual assault or the physical assault. And I'll just briefly talk about each of those, and we'll just go around clockwise, starting at the top with use of intimidation. That's commonly used with individuals where they may show a weapon, they may punch a wall, um, hollering, doing things of that nature that causes someone to just be slightly afraid or uncomfortable. The second one, using emotional abuse. Um, Again, the verbal assaults or the verbal attacks on people, making them feel bad about themselves, or even when they're in a crowd, maybe saying things to embarrass them or make them feel small or belittle someone. Those are acts of emotional abuse. Using isolation, um, that one people sometimes think, okay, well, they may lock someone in the room, or they may not let them go outside, or they may not let them leave the home, but that's not what isolation is. That's not the major role of isolation that we see. Oftentimes, isolation can be not letting you talk on the phone in privacy. That's isolation because you're not free to speak or say what you want to say to someone because you're being watched. So you're being isolated in that way. Or if you go to a doctor's appointment or go to church, they never let you go anywhere by yourself. They're always there with you so that they can monitor your behavior and monitor what you say to others, just to make sure that you don't try to get away from their grips or their control. Minimizing, blaming, and denying the abuse. Oftentimes, they may tell the victims, if you didn't do what you did, I wouldn't have had to behave that way, or I wouldn't have had to do this, or blame them for, you had that coming or you deserved it, or even denying it even happened. And that's another part of the gaslighting, or making people second guess what's going on, or second guess how things are really, how they are opposed to what they think they are. The next one is using the children. Sometimes an abuser may take the child, not return them home if there is an incident or a case where there's visitation rights. Sometimes if they're in the home, they may say some things to the kids to make the kids side with them, bashing their parent, just manipulating the children as well. They may also tell them, if you leave, then you know, I'll come get you, or I'll come take the kids, things like that. And using male privilege, that's often done when, you know, women aren't the only victims, males are victims as well. But I'll talk about statistics a little later. But using the male privilege, that's just assigning roles in the household or subservient roles, like a master servant kind of setup, or also telling and controlling what their partner wears, or if they're a woman, telling them they can't wear certain clothes. And then the next is using economic abuse. Again, that's just the manipulating of money, preventing them from being able to purchase things on their own, or even opening a credit account and damaging their credit so that they can't be financially independent on their own. And then the last one at the top is using coercion and threats. Again, threatening to commit suicide, threatening to kill their partner, threatening to harm their pets or their dogs, or any type of threat or coercion to get their partner to stay in their relationship with them. So as you can see, these are very powerful behaviors that they may seem small sometimes individually, but as time goes on and it chips away and it chips away at your self-esteem, your self-worth, and sometimes make you feel like you're not worthy, or you believe what your abuser says about you. So, how all of those behaviors work in the cycle of domestic violence, it always starts with a tension building phase, and that's when um, the victim may be walking on eggshells, trying to be careful. If I behave this way, if I be nice, if I keep the house clean or cook dinner, um, maybe they won't hurt me, and this comes with the insults, or the screaming and yelling at someone, or even hitting them, and they feel that a little timid in the relationship, like they can control their partner's behavior, but that never happens, and it goes on to the explosive event, and that's where the physical violence or the sexual assault occurs. After that, it moves on to the honeymoon phase. That's where everything is fine. The abuser is apologetic. um, we've seen cases where people have left their abuser, gotten a fight, left, gotten an argument, left, and the abuser comes back and begs them and tells them, apologizes, and just buys them gifts, try to convince them to come back to the relationship, and let them know that they've changed, or they may act like it never happened, but they make everything happy, or make everything the way the victim wants it to be, or so they think it is. And then it's back on to the next phase again, because after you've been abused or you've been hurt, you're going to second guess, the relationship. So it puts you back in that same position where you're uh, fragile and walking on eggshells. So why do victims stay? Why don't they leave? And a lot of people, um, that's a form of victim blaming. And I think that we've always done that in our society. But as you see on the previous slide, the abuser works really, really hard to get their victims to stay in that relationship. A lot of times they make them feel like it's their fault. And so they feel like they can change their abuser. Sometimes survivors are in love with the relationship, that person. They see the relationship as a whole. They don't see the abuse. They want the abuse to end, not the relationship. And it makes sense. They've been together, they share Christmases and memories together. And so those are happy times. That's what people tend to hold on to, the happy times. Us on the outside, we see the hurtful behaviors, but they don't focus on that, so they stay. And the biggest reason is there's a real fear of death for the victim if they try to leave. Um, Victims are most likely to be killed when they're attempting to leave or reporting to leave, or when they're reporting the abuse. 65% of domestic violence homicides occurred at the point of separation or shortly after. So that means at the point that that person left that relationship, they're still being stalked. They're still being emotionally abused. So, and they're also being killed. And that's anywhere from shortly after is a window of about 2 years, statistically. So um, that's a real reason to be afraid, and that's a real reason to stay in a relationship, especially if you don't have any help or you see no way out of your situation. Some of the red flags, as we described in those behaviors that will give us the indication that the relationship that we're in may not be healthy. And this is from an abuser's perspective or a victim's perspective, something to look at. If your partner is controlling, have an uncontrollable temper where they are up and down, mood swings, always jealous and insecure, isolating you again from your friends, or even pressuring you to have sex, or pressuring you to do things that you don't want to do, pressuring you to spend money or take your money. Those are all red flags. Okay, Helena. Do you all see my screen? I don't see it. Is the screen still sharing?
No, no, not sharing. It's black
Um,
screen.
I'm sorry. It did. It stopped.
I see it now.
Okay, so now I want to talk about a few statistics. What we have here is the domestic violence crime clock. This was created by the Kansas Bureau of Investigation. In Kansas, there are one incident of domestic violence every 22.8 minutes. There is a domestic violence arrest every 47.1 minutes, and a domestic violence murder in Kansas every 10.7 days. Um, Across the country, domestic violence is the leading cause of injury for females between the ages of 15 and 44. 1 in 3 women, 1 in 4 men have experienced some form of physical violence from their intimate partner in their lifetime. So as you can see, 1 in 4, that's a lot of men, and 1 in 3, that's a lot of women. So this isn't something that only happens in certain demographics. Domestic violence does not discriminate. It could happen to anyone, regardless of your sex, your age, your socioeconomic status, your religion. It doesn't matter. Any and everyone is at risk for an abusive relationship. So here I want to talk about economic abuse. And the reason that I want to talk about economic abuse more, because like I said, we all see physical, we can identify with um, the sexual and even some of the emotional abuse. But sometimes we don't pay attention or notice that uh, economic abuse is very prevalent. 96 to 99% of victims experiencing domestic violence are economically abused as well. And 1.5 million teenagers per year are victims of economic abuse. Okay. And economic abuse, again, a pattern of behaviors of control where one partner tries to interfere with another's ability to acquire, use, or maintain their economic resources. They come in 3 different types of abuse. There's either sabotage, and that's where they prevent their partners from acquiring resources. And that has a very long-term damaging effect on someone's life and someone's future. Financial control is where an abuser prevents their partner from using their own resources. And exploitation of resources is where the abuser uses the victim's resources or manipulates the victim's resources. So as we dig deep down into sabotage, that can be academic, career, or employment. So that just means interfering with someone's ability to study, controlling or whether someone's schedule with their job, not letting them go to work, um, maybe coercing them to change their plans. If, let's say, I want to go back to school, this is what I want to do. I want to be a CNA. Well, you're not smart enough for that. You need to focus on the kids, or you need to do this. Just anything to convince that person not to grow and not to be financially independent and to make a better life for themselves in the future. Um, it also includes interfering with someone, causing problems at work, or even preventing them from getting a job. On to the next one is financial control. Um, that's where they control all the money, and it doesn't necessarily have to be in a household. Um, Couples sometimes are out, and someone might tell them or pressure them how to spend their money, won't let them buy things that of their choice, or make them pay for different things. That is control and abuse. And last but not least is exploitation of resources. And that's where they take the money, maybe take their debit card out of their wallet, or even go spend their money for them, um, demanding access to their passwords on their financial accounts. Sometimes they'll get credit cards. Those are ways of exploiting someone's resources. They also run up debt, get them back credit, and we all know credit is key in today's society. If you want to do anything, you have to have good credit and good resources. So when you're damaged like that, you're not able to seek that financial independence. So those are the different forms of abuse. That's how they all work together. And now I want to move on and talk about resilience, because resilience is very important when it comes to our journey to healing and our journey to leaving our abuser. So what does resilience look like? It just means that we want to give the victim reassurance, make sure that we are transparent and honest. We're not able to make decisions on behalf of victims. It's our duty to love them and give them the space to develop on their own and make their own choices for that. It's what we do is you want to let them know that it's not their fault. If you do run into a victim, or if you are a victim, is you need to know it's not your fault. You don't deserve that. Violence is never okay, no matter what it is, and you deserve to be safe. You know, um, it's not our job to fix them. We never want to be judgmental with someone. And also, not being judgmental with them means not judging their abuser either. That doesn't help someone feel better about their situation, nor will it give them the confidence to reach out for help if they think other people are going to shame them or blame them. So, as always, just to wrap it up, listen to them, believe them, and always respond with care, compassion, assistance, respect always, and empathy. And the number one thing to do is, if we can't fix anything for someone, but you can always refer them to professionals that do. And the Delegate Joyce H. Williams Center, in our 24-hour crisis hotline, we're able to assist anyone with a phone call if they call. Everyone that comes into contact with Joyce Williams and other agencies, the first thing we do is safety planning, because that's what it's all about. They're in danger, so they need a safety plan, and it's going to always be a ongoing, individualized process that's always changing, because your life changes, your habits change, what you do on a daily basis changes. So that safety plan often will change as well as it needs to. It could be made around an event and a feeling that you're having or an ongoing situation that you're in. And the safety plan just helps you think and know what to do when you're in a crisis. Safety plans are always confidential. What we discuss, we never repeat or talk to with anyone. We validate the individual's resourcefulness. We don't tell them what their safety plan is. We walk them through the steps of them utilizing the resources and knowing their environment to establish that safety plan. And we discuss the risk in a respectful manner. Safety planning does not mean leave. It Leaving isn't always the best option for people. Sometimes that is the worst thing they can do at that time is leave. So and they may know that, not us. So we let them make that decision. It's always survivor driven. Um, Whenever you're doing your safety plan, they're the ones that decide. At the bottom, there is a app called myplanapp.org, and this is a safety planning app. And you can go in on put this on your phone, and it doesn't necessarily just, to me, it doesn't just necessarily be for safety for domestic violence. You can use a safety plan for anything, but it has you put in your information, your contacts. It helps you pull all your resources into one place so that you know what the plan is and someone else knows what your plan is as well. So what are the different components of a safety plan? We know that it's confidential and respectful, but as I said, you discuss safety routes or escape routes. We encourage you never to go into a closet or a room that has weapons, like the kitchen, there's knives. If you know there's a gun in the house, refrain from going to the place where the gun is. If at all possible, go into a room where there's a window, if at all possible. Those are things to think about. If you have children, it's very important to tell the kids it's not your job to save your parent. It's not your job to save me. Your job in this plan is to get to safety, is to get out of the situation so that you're not hurt. It's very important that if you have children, they need to be a part of this safety plan. And this safety plan needs to be looked at periodically, routinely, so that when the time comes, hopefully it'll be second nature and you jump right into it and you know how to get yourself to safety. And then again, get support, contact the local domestic violence shelter. If you have to communicate with an abuser, try to arrange to do it in a way that you feel safe. Always, if you can have some other people around you, um, that is the best thing to do. That way you feel more confident and secure in your safety. Safety planning for your finances. I wanted to include this as well. Avoid using your credit cards and debit cards that will give your abuser information about your whereabouts and what you do, especially if they have access to see your bank statements. And if that's an issue, that's something you want to be careful with. Keep all of your personal financial records in a safe place if you can, so that you can keep that private for yourself. Take a financial inventory, list your assets and your liabilities, gain a copy of your credit report. That way you can see if you know you're getting financially abused, get a copy of your credit report. That way you can see what's on there. And if you can, possibly begin to save money if you haven't already, that you can set aside that are just for you. Annualcreditreport.com, they give you one credit report per year, and that's through the three credit bureaus, TransUnion, Equifax, and Experian. Okay, now on to our advocates here at Delegate Joyce H. Williams Center. Our advocates for me are like the Avengers. They are not only skilled individually, but they also collectively meet the needs of our clients to ensure that we are providing survivor-driven care. And as you can see, we have the hotline advocates. We have a bilingual advocate. We also use a language line, so it doesn't matter if someone can speak English or not. We're still able to assist them via the phone if they call or whenever they come in for services as well. We have our social worker and case manager that work together to make sure that all of the needs are met for our survivors, regardless of what it is. When there's children involved, we have a family support advocate. We also have a child care advocate so that if someone needs to go to work or they need to do a doctor's appointment or even have a self-care day, and that's available for them to leave their children with our child care advocate so that they can get the proper care or take care of the business that they need to. Our disabilities advocate works with people with disabilities to make sure that they have everything that they need, all the resources, all the supplies, equipment, whatever it is, accessibility somewhere. We advocate for them. We are their voice. Our healthcare advocate assures that we get our individuals to their doctor's appointment or make sure that they have what they need. And our court advocates. If there's an issue and it doesn't necessarily have to be about a protective order, it could be a parking ticket because whatever is at the forefront of the survivor's mind, that's what is at the forefront of our list of things that we need to assist them with. So we can't tell them to be safe if they have a parking ticket. They know they're at risk to getting a warrant or maybe going to jail. So that's what we help them navigate the court system, get what they need, and take care of the business that they need to take care of so that they can deal with or process the trauma or whatever else they're going through. Here's a list of the services that we provide at the Delegate Joyce H. Williams Service Center. We do have our emergency shelter, and that's where our clients stay up to 90 days, and we move them on to, if they're still in our emergency shelter, to supportive housing, and that's their own housing. We work with the housing authority right now, so uh, we have a fast track program to where now our survivors usually don't stay in shelter for 90 days anymore. We're able to get them into their own housing in a shorter period of time, if that is their goal. Um, Again, our 24-hour crisis hotline, the job coaching. We do healthy relationships and education, support groups, you name it, whatever it is they have or whatever it is that they need, we're able to provide that help to them or provide them with the resources that they need to get the help that they need. So how do you make a referral? You would just call our 24-hour domestic violence crisis center line, and that's listed on the screen, the 913-321-0951. And again, as I said, we share the Metro hotline with the other 5 domestic violence shelters in the Kansas City area, and that is 816 hotline. At any given time, it could be our agency answering the phone or one of the other agencies answering the phone, but we do all work collectively to meet the needs of the entire community. So that just basically completes my presentation, and I want to just open it up for questions if you have any.
Thank you very much. And I will stop recording.